Thank you. The House will please come to order. We still have a couple of committees working, but we certainly need to start our day, and it's always good to start our day with some prayer. So, Reverend, please begin our day.
Pray. Our Lord in heaven, you have blessed Wyoming with so many great resources, a deep history, vast traditions, men and women who have gone before us who are true giants. We are here but a moment. Our Lord, we ask that you might bless us, that we are worthy to face this day, that we might meet these challenges, that we might complete our tasks, doing things that bring a higher glory to you. For these things we pray through Jesus Christ. Amen and amen.
All right, members, we're going to start our roll call, but we're going to leave it open. We have a privilege over here. Representative Newsom, a privilege. Anybody else? Cue up to the mics. Representative Newsom, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the gallery just above us is my niece, Haley Allen, and stand up. And she, she has been interning for us this week and last week and this week, and will be departing tomorrow to go to a speech meet. So if you'd give her a round of applause.
Well, so glad you were here. I hope it was a learning experience, and your auntie's still giving orders. That's good. Stand up, young lady. I like that. Representative Simpson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor. Appreciate this opportunity to introduce to you another one of my daughters and granddaughters that are visiting with me today. This is one of my Wyoming granddaughters. She lives a couple miles from me in Star Valley in the town of Fairview, Wyoming. On Mondays, she works for an orthopedic surgeon, but on the rest of the week, she's a mother of 4 grandchildren, which blesses my life greatly. Please welcome Emily and Carly.
Welcome to the House. So glad you're here, deserving your father and grandfather's work. My word, I see a privilege over here, Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please.
We have in the gallery up here, number 1 county, our county treasurer, Matt Keating. Give him a round, please.
Welcome, Mr. Keating. Glad to have you here. Ms. Provenza, do you have a special guest you'd like to introduce this morning? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to introduce the Charles Pelkey, who I am sitting in his seat, and I'm very grateful for the work that he has done.
Welcome. Representative Pelkey, a unique opportunity I have right now. I'll grant you a privilege. Please address the body that you used to serve in.
In jail for a while, but they always let me out when I asked to go. And I thought I'd stop by and say hi and see how you guys are doing. There's Chuck Gray, my frequent ally. I don't see a lot of masks, but over the last 2 years, I've decided I look much better with one on. I just wanted to wish you guys well. I want to wish you Godspeed in all your work, and keep the people of Wyoming in mind, and keep the first 3 syllables of ideology in mind as well. You do much better when we work together and don't draw sharp lines. So good to see you all. Oh, by the way, update on the kids. Philip is a graduate student in computer science, and oddly enough, has a job now working in blockchain. Annika, who was a frequent page for the day, is graduating in May. She has a $50,000 a year job waiting for her upon graduation. She has a degree in communications and psychology, and not to be too partisan, a minor in gender studies. So, and Diana and I just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary in August, and I'll be 64 in a couple of months. So anyway, we're there. Always open to hear a call from you guys. Good.
Well, great to see you again, and I'll have you note that new allyships have formed, and the person who took your seat actually now has that allyship with that same individual that you had one before. So there are some things just, well, some things, how's that?
When Chuck and I did vote together, I'd always walk up next to him. So, anyway, good seeing you guys.
All right, we have more privileges to the floor, and we got to get underway with our business. Representative Duncan,
Privilege, Mr. Speaker.
please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Up in the West Gallery is a constituent of mine, Scott Smith, please, from Lingle, Wyoming.
I don't know if anybody has said, Lingle is in the house. Great to have you here. Welcome. All right, any other privileges? Any other privileges? All right, let's try roll call now.
Convening roll for the 13th day, Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, excused. Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly. Here. Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flittner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, okay. Okay. Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Worf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Swanitzer, Mr. Speaker, Winter, Mr. Speaker, 59 present, 1 excused.
Thank you very much. And again, members, thank you very much for your work yesterday. I know that was a long day. A lot of thought, a lot of emotion. I know that can be challenging, late day, long day, heavy issues. And then thank you for your indulgence with the floor ceremony for our fallen heroes. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of March 1st, 2022 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Haroldson and Provenza.
All right, members, if you have observed your second reading, you will note that there are some amendments. And there's only 2 bills, but there seemed to be a lot of interest in those 2 bills. So I think to try to give us plenty of time and maybe hopefully dispense with both of these bills before noon, we're just going to embark directly into second reading, and then we'll come back and do some of the Committee of the Whole reports, referral bills, and et cetera. So with that, seeing no further business, first order of business is second reading. First bill for our consideration is Senate File 66.
Senate File 66, sponsored by Appropriations. American Rescue Plan Act Recovery Funds Appropriations. An act relating to the emergency expenses of government.
As I mentioned, there are amendments. First one, Representative Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'd like to move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 66 and ask for your favorable consideration. And so, ladies and gentlemen, what this amendment does is add $15 million of ARPA money to broadband for use next year. And so I'm going to kind of walk through, and what it also does in here, and because there's been concern from others about whether this will be maintained over time, there's a requirement of 20 years. You have to maintain the infrastructure for 20 years, which kind of goes along with some RUIs that are out there that are 20-year leases on fiber. So it's 20 years is a common term. You know, and so just to give you an idea what some other states have done with their ARPA money. Montana spent $275 million in ARPA, on ARPA money. Vermont, which has a population similar to ours, has appropriated $150 million of ARPA and is looking at another 95. And so what you have to understand is what are these pots of money for broadband? And so what the JAC did is they basically put aside $25 million that has to be used for a match for other federal programs. And what it is a match for is for the infrastructure bill. So the infrastructure bill provided $100 million to broadband, but you have to provide a $25 million match to get that $100 million. So that's what that's doing. But that program is a ways out, maybe 2023. None of that has been settled yet because they're waiting for FCC to do mapping. And so what else is available for broadband? So also in the ARPA bill, the governor is given authorization on what was called the ARPA capital construction dollars, the $604. And so this bill gives the governor the ability to expend them. And what the governor has suggested that he's going to do is he'll provide $75 million of that to broadband, and then other monies will go. The rest of that, it's a pot of 109, is between some CapCon projects, libraries, and other connectivity projects. And so why is this 15 million needed? And the reason, and even that 604 money, it has to be applied for by September, and whether any of it would get in here in time for the construction season remains to be seen. And according to the document put out by the good chief executive on his ARPA request, in that write-up on broadband, he says there are still an estimated, or this release says there are still an estimated 100,000 to 130,000 unserved residents in Wyoming. And so my hope is we can get this 15 million out and use it this summer to put projects on the ground. So, thank you.
So member on second reading, first time, Representative Larson, Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think when history reflects back and looks at how the state finally turned the corner and put broadband in, they can't help but have the good sponsor this amendment's name in there. And this goes for the time that I've served with him, he's been very focused, and thank heavens he has, on expanding broadband and connectivity for the state of Wyoming, for our schools and for employers and for new businesses. My hat is off to him, and love the work that he's done here. As we considered broadband in the whole scope of things, we thought that as we looked at the one-time dollars with what we've done last year and with what we have available in ARPA, in the 602 money in section 602, which is where this 25 is at and where he wants to take the 15 from, and then with the potential of another 75 million coming out of the section 604 money, we thought that the amount that we had in there was appropriate when you based it proportionally to the needs of the rest of the state for these one-time funds. I'd encourage a no vote on that. I think I don't argue that we're not putting in as much as maybe some other states are, but I think our investment in broadband through the use of these one-time dollars is pretty significant, and again would resist this amendment.
Thank you. Representative Larson, Dan, first time, then to Representative Stiff.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'd encourage a no vote on this amendment. I guess I ask when is enough spent on this? There's other options out there. There's a link in the stars up there that people can use. I do use it, and it has good connection. So I'd encourage a no vote.
Representative Stiff, and then Representative Duncan.
Mr. Speaker, on and against the amendment, just to put the numbers in context, folks, without this amendment, how much money will likely go to broadband? Without this amendment, we already have $25 million, which is matched 4-to-1 with the federal government through the infrastructure bill. So that is 25 million plus another 100, that's 125 million. And then on page 18 of this same bill, you have the section 604 funds. And the section 604 funds, there's a available 96 million, of which it's to the governor's office, of which it's our understanding the executive intends to spend 75 million. So essentially, if we make no changes at all, we will be spending about $200 million on broadband alone. That's a lot of money, folks. If we add, this amendment would add another 15. And unfortunately, this amendment would add another 15 in a pretty inefficient way, because this amendment doesn't have any 4-to-1 match to it. So instead of putting in 15 and getting another 60 out of it, you put in 15 and all you get is 15. And really, the significance of this amendment is that the money is available immediately for this construction season. And look, if you have to wait an extra year to get high-speed download of your favorite streaming series, you may have to wait 12 months for it. So on and against.
Representative Duncan, then to Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment. Let's look back. Just a year, 2 years ago, we were shut in, schools were closed, we had issues here, we had to do remote. Let's look further back. You look from here to my home. We have dead zones. I can't even make a phone call all the way between here and my home. We're in 2022, and I can't make some phone calls. I can't even connect between Lingle and Lusk. They can't have internet service in some places. We have to remember that broadband is not just your wire in the wall. It's not just that type of internet. It is also your wireless. It is also the dish that is on the outside of your house. So we have to remember the thing about broadband is majority of our state is rural. A lot of these people who are complaining about broadband and enough is enough, too much is too much, you guys are living in a city. You guys have fine. You have fiber. Woohoo! I live in a town of 525 people. We don't have service. Come live in my town. Come live in my neighborhoods. Come live on a farm or a ranch. And then come and have school out. Come and have teachers having to teach. Or come and have a Zoom or a meeting and you have this and where it cuts out or you drop your service. The service that goes through the satellites and goes across the, the star stuff, that's not reliable either. We must think and provide for our communities. This is a way to link communities together. This is not necessarily about internet. This is about our communities being linked together, our schools, our businesses. We keep bragging that we are a business-friendly state. Well, if we keep saying, oh, enough, we're fine, we don't need it, that's not business-friendly. Business-friendly means that we have high-speed capability, that people can work from their homes. Businesses can come in and they can have any kind of service they need. Schools, people can work from the virtual schools, homeschool, all types of school can have the ability to have the services they need. Hospitals. During this last time, we had a lot of people who had to have services that they were able to stay at their homes and not have to go into the hospital and to be able to have those remote services. That is 2022 service. People, quit living like we're in 1985. We're in 2022. I should be able to make a phone call or be able to watch our service of our floor debate all the way home. People across the state should be able to connect with us and see what's going on and for the amendment.
So Representative Duncan, you don't want to borrow my flip phone? No. Thank you. Just checking. Representative, just checking. I thought that 1985 comment was directed at me and my flip phone, so I was a little bit hurt there. Representative Henderson, first time on the amendment, then we're going to, Representative Yin was there, but Representative Henderson, and we'll keep going.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and for this amendment. You know, we have about 600,000 folks living in Wyoming today, and about 20% of them have no service. A few years ago, we stood up a broadband advisory council and developed an improvement plan for our state. And there was a manager hired, and we made some good progress. But where we stand today is we're 46th in the country, 46th. And we could spend all the money that we're talking about that's in the budget, and we still won't move up that list. But think about if you're out in an area where it don't have this service and you need to make a call for emergency services, or you need that connectivity for your business or your living, or somebody in your family who needs to get a hold of a medical provider to get some help for emotional related stuff or whatever. But this is a good amendment. This is very small, modest amount, and I'd urge your strong support. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Olson and then Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really think the last two speakers have hit the nail on the head. This amendment is not about streaming movies. It is about far more than that. I'm on and for this amendment for a lot of what's already been said. We're talking about employment and economic growth. We're talking about remote work opportunities education access, healthcare to our rural hospitals, how they connect and speak with major hospitals, larger medical centers, research centers, specialists. We're talking about a future that involves telehealth, farming and ranching, and independent aging, which hasn't been said yet. 9 out of 10 boomers, when surveyed, would like to age out in their homes. And having connectivity to the rest of the world facilitates that process and makes for a much more comfortable living in your golden years. I found this interesting fact, which looking deeper into this, and I noticed that the USDA, for example, has entered into a campaign to invest $150 million into 19 broadband infrastructure projects in 14 states. Now, so that's what sparked my interest in this amendment. Why is the USDA so interested in it? And it's because of what the previous speakers are talking about. Again, we're not talking about being able to download something or stream a movie simply in your home. This amendment is so much more. When we're talking about farming and ranching, smart farming, connectivity for the future, education access isn't just, it's an issue in Wyoming, and we definitely saw it. If you represent rural communities, you saw this during the pandemic when teachers had to find a way to teach from home, when students had to find a way to come to school from home. This is the link. So for a very, very modest amount, you're building the infrastructure that facilitates the future for all of these things: education, healthcare, economic growth, farming, et cetera. So I just urge you to adopt the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stiver, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the amendment, like the good speaker from House District 48 said, we've got enough money in this. Look how much we've spent already. This should be private enterprise doing this. Here recently, the state to the west of us used their CARES Act money and connected all their communities that didn't have broadband in the places that are hard to build. I-70 down in the state to the south of us, when it was closed, I was part of that got that put through the canyon down there. So they had cell service. And it was private enterprise that did it. So on and against the amendment.
Thank you. Representative Roscoe, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and in favor of this amendment. I think if we look back historically, this is as important as the rural electrification of the United States. And think about what that did for our rural and agricultural economy. And think about how we sell cows these days over the internet. Thank you.
Representative Burt, then Knapp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm against the amendment. We can look from the past and see where we got to where we're at, and we're at 2022, and we can look to the future. And currently, we're at 7.5% inflation rate. We continue to take free money from the government because it's free, and our inflation rates will continue to go up. So eventually, we're going to have to keep paying the bill for this free money. But that's not really my big concern. My big concern is that if this market was profitable, then the industries that run these broadbands would already put the infrastructure into place for their own profit. The fact that it's not profitable is why these communities don't have it. And the fact that we're going to try to prop up a particular industry with subsidies from the government is really my big concern. So I'm on and against, not because I don't care and I have a cold heart in communities, but I just don't think it's the government's role to make people feel good and make them comfortable. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Knapp, first time on the amendment, and then Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, similar to what was said, it is not profitable. And private businesses wouldn't be doing that unless it was funded by the government. So what is government responsible for? To me, I equate it to our road system. Government provides for an interstate. Government provides for state highways. Government even provides for some county roads. But we don't guarantee a road to everybody's house, and we don't pay for that. There are other options, and especially for those remote areas, the other options are almost better. So on and against.
Thank you. Chairman Nicholas, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I have a few questions for the bringer of the amendment that I think would
Go
be
ahead
useful.
and adjust the microphone so we can hear you, please.
Say that again?
Please use the microphones, not be looking backwards while you're
I was just
speaking to the
making sure
body.
I was just making sure he's listening to it.
That isn't going to help, I can assure you.
So a few questions. Number one is, for all the other projects that went through the appropriations, we had some form of a matching component from industry or the recipients of what we're doing. And I don't see any of that in this, and so it's just a flat 15 just to go. And so I'm just curious if we might tag in a little matching on a third reading amendment to have buy-in from the company and buy-in from the recipients of the beneficiaries of it. My next question is, I'm curious if there's some type of an overall statewide plan or some entity, because how are we going to know where we're going to jump off the current broadband and which direction we're going to move, and how are we going to do this in a synchronized fashion that we do it in the most constructive, most cost-efficient way to do it? Because we're going to have 15 million here and then 200 million by the end of next year, and then there are two more tranches of infrastructure dollars coming, which I understand is another 100 million and another 100 million after that. And so if we don't organize this and put this in a structured fashion, maybe even form some type of a committee or sorts, a working group, either through the governor's office or some mechanism, so that we do this efficiently and do not tread on each other as we move forward. I also have questions on what is currently planned for this summer. I mean, what are the broadband folks doing? Because if there's already projects in line, will we have the workforce to get the work done that we're going to be requesting? And if we start stacking a bunch of jobs on top of each other, what's the inflationary impact of that going to be? If we're not smart about it, then we're going to pay a lot more for a lot less. So all these things I think needed to be talked about, discussed. So otherwise, I'm all for broadband, so.
Representative Yin, first time on the amendment. Anybody else that would like to speak that doesn't already have their mind made up on this amendment, please find a microphone. Representative Yin, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So on having a statewide plan, we actually have a broadband task force, and they spent meetings all year to figure out what we need to do for broadband. We had a bill that came out, and I think the overall sentiment was we should just roll it into the ARPA, essentially omnibus bill. And so this is that mechanism for doing that. This is where we do that. So this is money for projects that we need to put in now, and projects that reach communities that haven't been reached. So as the good representative, one of the representatives from Cheyenne said, there's about 20% of the population that haven't been reached. If we said, let's not electrify 20% of the population, we don't need to put electricity into the farms over there. They don't need electricity to farm their land. I think a lot of us would be in real trouble. Broadband is what electricity was then, as the good representative from Wilson said. It transforms businesses, it transforms people, it transforms communities. It turns, even in agriculture, broadband is being used to help have higher yields than we have now. So I think when we talk about saying, oh, we're just propping up companies, no, we are helping our communities get access to essentially a utility of the 21st century. And that's what we need to be on the lookout here. We have federal money to do this. On the satellite aspect, I think I heard a couple of people say, we just have satellite options. We can just do that now. There's a fundamental limit, basically based on physics, on how many people can be handled under each satellite. So I think the new satellite service is really good. I think it can only really support maybe 1% of the population. So that extra like 3 to 1% of the population that's super far away from everyone else and in the mountains, that's what's good for the satellite. But it isn't good for the other 17% that we need to wire. And we have the money now to do it. Let's not have to spend state dollars and doing it later in the future. Let's use the money we have to do it now, and on and for the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Gray, and then Representative Fortner. Representative Gray, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that I think has been missing from this conversation so far, it's been kind of oriented towards broadband good versus broadband bad. I think you can vote no on this amendment, even if you're for government funding of broadband, and here's why. The federal acts that they've done on COVID relief set aside specifically $109 million. And the Treasury guidance basically made it so that it couldn't go to anything except broadband. Okay, and appropriations was quite creative, looking at how to use other ways to use it. The only thing they could find in the Treasury guidance was using it for a multi-purpose building in Jackson, which was in the previous bill. So that's going to be $10 million if ultimately they approve that project. But there is a tranche of about $100 million, more than $100 million with that $10 million project. It's $100 million specifically set aside for broadband. So, the broadband junkies have a huge amount already set aside. There's also $25 million already in this bill from the over $1 billion, which is outside of the $100 million that was set aside for broadband. Doesn't make sense for us to add another $15 million in a pot of money that wasn't set aside for that purpose. And I understand there's a lot of supporters of broadband, but we just can't keep every single time a bill goes through that isn't for that purpose, just add in another 15, 20 million. It doesn't make sense. There's already 100 million for this. And a separate account in a separate funding tranche from the federal government. And there's already 15 million there in this bill. So please vote no on this amendment. It's not necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Fortner, first time. We're almost to 25% of the body that's spoken on this. Keep it up. Representative Fortner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Federal money, strings attached. That's what we're looking at. Again, I vote no on the amendment, no on the bill.
Thank you. Representative Harrelson on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I've been hearing a couple things, and I've been actually doing some digging and finding out this broadband doesn't automatically mean that your cell phone will work from Cheyenne to Lingle. Broadband is not cell phone service. Could cell phone towers tie into broadband? Potentially. So I think we need to just realize that broadband isn't going to fix all your dead spots with your cell phone. That's not the purpose of broadband. The second thing you need to realize is the state has not yet been mapped for broadband. So we don't really even know. I mean, this is kind of we're going to put a bucket of money out there and then hopefully they'll map the state and fix the problem. And so I just think that these are some things we need to realize as we continue to dump into this. Do I believe that we need to bring our infrastructure up? I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just at a point right now where we need to make sure that what we're doing is the right move and understand that if we put an extra $25 million into broadband, that doesn't automatically mean that your cell phones are going to work better. Just keep that in mind.
Any other members first time? Chairman Zwanitzer, first time.
Thanks. First for a second, Mr. Speaker.
Any other first for seconds? First for seconds. Any other members first time? Second time. Representative Stith, second time.
Microphone on? It says it's on. Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just briefly, let's think the big picture here. How much ARPA direct money is left to spend, right? Because this is a finite number, and it's about $50 million, $52 million total we have to spend. And by when do we have to spend it? Do we have to spend it today? No, we don't have to spend it this session. It needs to be obligated by December 31st, 2024, spent by December 31st, 2026. So we don't have to burn through all $52 million for starters. And the next is to think about the other alternative uses. For example, ambulance service, right, is a real problem. And ambulance service is ARPA eligible. So when you ask yourself, what's more important, your download speed or having an ambulance respond, I think it's obvious. There are other uses for ARPA. So this 15 million in this amendment is a big chunk of that 50 million or so that's available. And finally, I do want to make a correction. Not that anyone was listening to me last night, but I did make a mistake in characterizing 10 million of it of the 25 existing as not requiring any federal match and being effective immediately. And that's not quite accurate. The 10 million of the 25 in the existing bill still does require or require the 4-to-1 federal match, which I think is a good thing. But last night I said it was not. So I just wanted to correct the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Larson Lloyd, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hopefully can just want to clarify and perhaps maybe have some course corrections on a couple of comments. Some pretty passionate comments on connecting schools. Schools are connected already. Now, you may not be connected to the school, but our school system through the unified network is indeed connected. So that's taken care of. We talked about a couple of pots of money, and I want to clarify this again. In this bill, this is section 602 of the act, and we're going to talk about the section 604, which is in here as well. But in this, we're taking another 15 million. We've got 25. We're going to do another 15 million out of this and put it to broadband. Then as we get to this 604 money, which the good representative from Casper alluded to, is $109 million for basically, it was called capital construction. It was really designed for broadband construction with the caveat that you can use it for library projects and multi-purpose projects. We have in there about 10.3 million for an addition at one of our community colleges. But if you take that out, it's going to leave about 75 million, as the good greener of this amendment pointed out. So 75, 25 that we have in there, there's 100 million. This wants to take it up. So when we say it's just this minimal, the minimus amount, this 15 million, isn't crazy. We talk 15 million as being just no big deal. I just think that there's plenty of other areas that we've allocated money for broadband development in the state, and leaving this 15 million in the pot to be used for other projects in the state is maybe more prudent, and would encourage a no vote on the amendment.
Any other members, second time? Second time. Representative Knapp, second time. If you're queued up for second time, please go to a microphone. Representative Knapp, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We happen to have one of the largest broadband companies in our community. And I know last year they did probably $18 million on about 26 different projects. And they had to keep adding on projects. Why? Because there was such a flood of money into those projects that the other bidders ended up not being able to finish their projects. So they dumped them on this company. It's a lot of money, and in talking to them, their concern was the same thing: is we've built the backbone. Why are we continuing to spread out into these remote places where we can't even service? We couldn't do this unless we were receiving money. So they're left with the service afterwards as well. The other alternative, which kind of was discounted earlier, there's 2,000 satellites right now for service. By 2024, there will be 4,425 satellites. 11,943 satellites have been approved by the commission, the federal commission in charge of communications. So 11,943 satellites to service remote sites. And currently, we've talked a lot about one country being invaded by another country. that country's phone service now is exclusively run by satellite service. So there are other alternatives. I don't think it's a good idea to spend so much money going into such remote areas when there's other options. Thank you.
Any other members, second time to the sponsor, Representative Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the robust debate. I guess to the other speaker, if you do live in a city, I can understand why maybe you wouldn't want to spend more money on broadband. If you live out in the country, I think you could appreciate it. As to the satellite system that's being put up, that's like in the beta phase of testing, and I don't even know when that's going to show or what it'll ultimately cost people. Broadband is an essential service. The U.S. chose not to go down the path of a regulated utility with broadband. Instead, the federal government is putting grant money to broadband. That is these dollars, the ARPA dollars, were specifically crafted for this purpose. If you looked at how the regulations rolled out and how they were refined, ARPA was meant for broadband. There's other things, but it was meant for broadband. As to mapping, we currently do have a mapping process in the state of Wyoming, and it is being refined. And in fact, I believe, I know, some of the other COVID dollars, some of that was put into that mapping process. So that mapping process is well underway. And I think is good enough to do what we need to do here. Workforce, is there enough workforce? That's one reason I want to see 15 million now, so we spread these projects out over time. And as far as should this all be done just by private industry or public, I think about, the water lines we put in. Those contractors are private companies, but they're using federal, state, and local dollars to put in water lines. You name it, construction, a lot of construction for the people out there is done through federal, state, and local dollars. And there's no return on investment to go out to these small subdivisions in these counties without this help. So I would urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we are voting on second reading, Amendment Number 1, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is not adopted. So members, I want to have a little bit of person-to-person connectivity here. We have got a group of students here visiting us. They are from 5th grade from Pioneer Park. So would you stand up, young folks, stand up, welcome them to the house. Welcome to the house. We're glad you're here today. We hope you find it educational. So members, we are now at 1 down, 12 to go. Amendments on this file. Next amendment is number 2. Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 66. It's pretty straightforward. There is an area in my district that has been trying to get natural gas for decades and decades. The local utility, shall we say, has not been helpful at all. Despite that, the local mayors in this area have been able to make this happen through a USDA loan for about $5.2 million to build this natural gas pipeline out there. Unfortunately, there's been some bad timing with COVID, and they've incurred some costs that were just unforeseen that were COVID related. Specifically, they ordered the meters for this gas I believe it was last February-ish, last March. They didn't arrive until late December, early January. So the cold season had already started in, and they lacked the infrastructure to actually hook up the gas to these homes to get these homes heated. There was a $150,000 fee from the local utility to purge the gas lines. There was another $100,000 additional costs from construction materials. And so right now, the Joint Powers Board that runs this natural gas pipeline is facing a cash shortage, and they are working with USDA, but USDA communicated to the Joint Powers Board that they need to exhaust all other alternatives for them to work with them and to keep them from, from going down the foreclosure and arrears process. So this is what that amendment does. It gives the Joint Powers Board the liquidity they need to ensure that they can stay on schedule with paying the USDA back for this natural gas pipeline. So I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any members first time? Chairman Zwan, it's your first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the amendment, I was wondering if the sponsor could name any other projects in the state that would also be receiving this funding or would be eligible. It's just concerning if it's kind of direct funding to one community, and I want to make sure it's available to any community that would ask for this kind of support.
Thank you. Representative Ottman, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was just wondering how many businesses and homes this might serve. Thank you.
Any other member? First time, first time, first time, first time, second time, to the bringer. Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the good chairman, yes, I can't give you an exact list of other communities, but yes, this would be eligible to others as well. Obviously, I hope they don't apply, so my community gets it. But and to the other question, it's between the two broader communities in Dana Ranchester, it's right around 1,600-ish people, give or take, and in addition to the small businesses and the ranches that use natural gas to power their center pivots. So I ask for your favorable consideration.
All right, members, we're voting on second reading. Amendment number 2, House Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is not adopted. Next, Amendment 3. Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 66. So folks, I have been referred to as an optimist, stubborn, tenacious, but really I prefer passionate. I ran for office so that I could be an enthusiastic champion for our Wyoming communities. With this amendment, I am seeking funds to match state and local dollars to support an airport expansion, the development of a conference center, the recruitment and growth of businesses, the adaptive reuse of a tourist attraction, and expansion of a food pantry. These projects will create 102 jobs for Wyomingites. They will generate $6.7 million in revenue recapture, and to date, $20.5 million in state funds and $7.8 million in local contributions have been earmarked for these projects. So this amendment allocates $8.7 million of rescue plan funds to complete these 10 projects that have experienced negative impacts, specifically cost increases due to the pandemic. And if you look in your emails, you will find a message from me sent about 10 o'clock this morning with these 10 communities and the projects listed. So these projects are either halfway through construction or stuck in the design and bid phase. So this $8.7 million is less than initially anticipated. When the Economic Development Agency came to the governor, it was at $15 million. When the governor recommended, our chief executive recommended it to JAC, it was $10 million. So I'm happy to report that since that time, these communities have worked really hard to value engineer, which can be a very emotional, difficult process, to find cost savings. They've fundraised, they've gone back to their communities to ask for more money, they've asked for new bids, and they've applied for alternative grant and loan funds. So I believe they've done their due diligence in trying to close this gap, but yet it still exists. So please note that through this bill, through this allocation, grants through our economic development organization to these projects are reimbursable, meaning that they have to spend the money, pay for it locally, and then request reimbursement. So this amendment allows funds that are unexpended by September 30th of 2023 to revert back. And then according to rulemaking, these projects still have to comply with the application process. So they'll still work with our economic development organization to apply. They'll still have to be vetted through SLIB for final approval, and they'll still have to be matched. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Representative O'Hearn, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We are discussing Senate File 66, American Rescue Plan Act. By its very wording, it is the Rescue Plan Act. One doesn't need rescued before they jump in the water, but after. We are simply asking by this amendment that these 10 projects that have already been processed and vetted by the WBC and approved by SLIB, that they are already in the water, be rescued. As a good representative from District 14 said, in GL number 17, the executive downstairs asked for the BRC gap funding of 10 million because he saw the need to rescue these projects that have already begun, i.e. they're in the water and they're in need of a paddle. Can we afford them a guarantee that rescues or that resources will be there for them to finish their started projects and be afforded a little due process while going through the SLIB? I believe all the project recipients will agree and will begin the process to fund the additional gap funding at the same match that the original funds were appropriated for. There was some discussion about matching funds. They're all going to match the funds. Due to COVID, extended job delays, and inflation costs, these projects are already in the water. They need rescued. These projects are all over the state, not just in one community. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Representative Simpson for your first time, then we'll go to Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps the third time we'll be lucky for these folks. I sure compliment the bringers of this amendment for their tenacity and their desire to serve their communities. They did pick up the message that we sent to them last time, and that is we don't prefer to prioritize their projects over other projects. So this amendment literally line items in, this is an extra $8.8 million we'd be allocating out of the ARPA funds. The challenge here is the bringers of the amendment are suggesting that there will be a sponsor contribution, but I don't see that in the bill anywhere. This appears to be a direct allocation for 100% of those inflationary costs. And I'm interested in the sponsor's response of where does it say anywhere that the communities or the private companies that are receiving these grants programs through the Wyoming Business Council, where does it say that the owners are contributing something, or is the state expected to pick up 100% of the inflationary costs?
Thank you. Representative Newsom, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking on and in favor of this amendment, we've all referenced inflation over and over and over again on this very floor, this very year. And these projects are in the middle of being completed. Inflation has reared its ugly head. And I think we have an obligation to have these funds that will allow these projects to be completed in a reasonable manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Larson-Lloyd on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The conversation reminds me a little bit of a trip I took a number of years ago, and I was traveling on the interstate, and I was really quite hungry, seeing a town approaching, and as I looked, there was 3 places to get off, and each one of them had a place to go eat. And I said, I didn't want that one, and no, I didn't want that one. So I went on past them, and the next town was like an hour and a half away, and I didn't want to turn around, so I just had to kind of just duck my head and keep going because I wouldn't pull in and take advantage of what was there. So I'd like you to look on this bill and tie this in because I agree that these projects are good and they've hit some tough times and we want them to get completed. But if you look on page 5 and look at line 1 and 2, we have local government support projects. Pick what you want to eat there. Or we've got number 2, eligible water and sewer projects, and maybe that's where you want to eat. But the menu's there, and these projects could, as my colleague on appropriations pointed out, they are going to be able to come in. I would certainly think that these are the type of projects that we would want to consider, want to vet them in the proper way, but maybe it's not exactly how we want to eat them, and which means that we want to specify that it has to be for this 7 or 8 million for these specific projects. We've tried to take care of this, and it's in there. And so rather than appropriate this money that could be used for other projects, I would argue that we have $100 million in there dedicated already to address these types of projects. And I think that they would certainly be considered and probably approved, and I would resist this amendment as well.
Thank you. Any of the members first time, first time, first time? If we want to speak to the amendments, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to a microphone. Representative Wharf, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too would rise in support of this. I think this is the purpose of the funds that we've been given. We have projects that have been approved. We have projects that it's no fault of their own that we've had a pandemic. It's no fault of theirs that we are dealing with unprecedented inflation that we haven't seen in over 40 years. And so I think that's the purpose of these funds. And so I would urge the body to adopt this amendment. Please vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Sweeney, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I too rise in support, and I can't disagree that maybe they're jumping to the front of the line because the rest of us were asleep at the wheel. I don't know. But I think these are well vetted, ready to go, shovel ready, and already been approved. And I think it's a small investment of already proven projects. So I'm in favor of the amendment and obviously in favor of the bill.
Thank you. Representative Duncan, first time.
First for a second, Mr. Speaker.
Any other members, first time? Any other members, first time? First time, second time? Second time. Representative O'Hearn, second time.
Once again, American Rescue Plan Act. They're already in the water for the amendment.
Any of the members, second time? Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you. And again, I agree. And if you read the email we got, there is going to be an application process through this amendment to SLIB. But if you look at the money that we already have appropriated to do this appropriation to the Office of State Lands Investment is for administrative costs, merit-based allocations of competitive grant funding to cities, towns, and counties government. It's the same thing. We've tried to provide the means here to do that. I certainly hope if they're shovel ready, they should get that application in, get it approved, get these projects completed. The money's there. We wish you the best. We look forward to seeing all of this completed. We just don't need to fund extra money to do it.
All right, any other members, second time? Other members, second time? Seeing none. To the sponsor, Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the body for this consideration. So just again, as a reminder, if you go to State Statute 9-12-601 through 603, that outlines how these grant applications have to be processed and approved, and it does require a matching. So these projects will be conforming with existing state statute through our statewide economic development office. And essentially without this allocation, so we're creating a lot of uncertainty for these communities that have already worked really, really hard to get to this point. So the numbers that I shared with you earlier don't even include the amount of time, staff time that's been put into this, community time that's been put into this. Sometimes it takes years to even get to the point that your application is ready to be vetted by your community. So I really want to honor the work that our communities have done to bring these projects forward, know that they are 100% vetted, and again, have 20.5 million in state money sitting here in limbo, right? So without this allocation, without this amendment, we're saying it's okay to just set that 20.5 million the state's already invested in these projects aside and just leave it up for whatever might happen. But with this amendment, we are guaranteeing not only that that 50 million is there for new projects, but we're guaranteeing that we're going to finish what we start. So let's honor the fact that we've already invested a lot of time and resources into these projects, into these communities. Let's finish them. Let's get them to the finish line and leave this 50 million for communities that are going to come to SLIB with new projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we're voting on second reading, amendment number 3, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Chair is in doubt. All those in favor, please rise. Those opposed, more than 22. The amendment is not adopted. Representative LeBeau,
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Speaker.
please proceed.
In our south balcony, members, you'll see the 5th grade of Miss Kensler's class. And let's give them a warm welcome here to the Wyoming House of Representatives. And Mr. Speaker, members of the body, I just want to point out Mr. Emerson. Emerson won his election and he serves on the student council, and he is the son of former Representative Sarah Burlingame.
Well, welcome to the House. So glad you're here with us today. We hope you find it educational. Next amendment 4, Representative Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 66 and ask for your favorable consideration. Folks, this is a little itty-bitty amendment, $200,000 only for some mental health services, and you might wonder, how is it possible that such a small amount of money can do anything good? And I will tell you, it's because this particular program multiplies like the fishes and the loaves. And so what this money is, there's an existing program that we set up last year with some of the CARES Act money that trains people around the state in a program that's called mental health first aid. And what that is, it's like CPR, only for mental health. It teaches people to identify and respond to situations of mental illness or substance use disorder. And what this $200,000 would do is to enable people to learn to be trainers of the program. Last year, there were far more people that wanted to take this than they had money to do. And the great thing about this program and the trainers is that anybody can learn to be a trainer. So nurses, law enforcement, clergy, bartenders, whatever type of person. They take the training, and then to maintain their certification as a trainer, they have to do 3 more trainings a year. So that's how, as it multiplies like the fishes and the loaves. And so you'll look and see when it says on the amendment, 103 people, the way we put that together, and you'll see it says a trainer in a school district, community college district, at the university, and so on. We're not meaning that the people have to be employees of those areas to be a trainer. That was how we set up the numbers, with the idea of having the trainers spread across the state, be in all the communities from the various whatever members of your community, and we would really like $200,000 to continue this awesome program in helping people with mental health and substance abuse needs.
Thank you, Chairman. Any members first time? First time, first time, first time, second time. Seeing no further discussion, members, we're voting on second reading, amendment number 4, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. Next amendment, number 5, Chairman Nicholas.
Mr. Speaker, I would move second reading amendment number 5 to House Bill Senate File 66 and ask for your favorable consideration. So what this is, ladies and gentlemen, this was a request that made it through the strike team of the task force for the governor on where and how some of these ARPA funds should be used. And so let's just talk about what it does. This provides $250,000 that will go to the Department of Family Services And the purpose of that is they're going to hire a consultant who's going to essentially evaluate all of the food donated distribution systems around the state to try to organize them and determine exactly what's needed in order to coordinate them so that we can give out more food to those who need it and do it in a more organized fashion and to minimize the waste of the food that's out there. And so what we've learned and what was testified to during these meetings is, but particularly as a result of the pandemic, all of these structures are basically nonprofits or church-based organizations all in individual communities. But they don't work together because they are local. And some communities do it a lot better than the others. But there's basically a lot of things that fall through the cracks in terms of food going to waste, how you coordinate it, who you get it to, and how you get it to. And so it was the recommendation that we have somebody study this, put together kind of a case plan so that we can coordinate all of the folks in the communities and determine the best way to do it in all our communities, big and small, across the state. So I appreciate your support of the amendment.
Discussion on the amendment, discussion on the amendment, discussion. Seeing none, members, we are voting on second reading amendment number 5, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. Next amendment, 6. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So this is a request that was brought to me from several different communities that are looking into the prospect, and one of them that's in the middle of constructing a children's museum. The children's museums, it's kind of designed around the United States that are an alternative place for kids to go, where you have volunteer high school kids or college kids that come in and instruct, all on a nonprofit basis. They'll provide lunches, they'll have outings, they'll do all these type of programs to accommodate particularly the disproportionate folks in our communities that need places to go after school and activities, that type of thing. So, for example, I know that the one here in this county, they bought ground, they purchased the property, they have a construction cost in place. They've always been short funded, but now because of the COVID and the rise of inflation, their budget, they have to spend all their budget basically on construction without going into the larger components of putting the building back together. I understand that there's another one that'd like to have some of these funds as well. It's a great program for the community. It requires a 2-to-1 match, so that out of this monies we get 1.5 million for the investment of our kids, and particularly our disproportionate kids around the state. So I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on amendment. Seeing none, members, we are voting on second reading amendment number 6, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is not adopted. I don't know what happened. Next amendment, 7. Did not hear a division. I thought it was some snarky comment from the back. Division being called. All those that are in favor of the amendment, please rise. All those opposed? More than 19. Amendment is not adopted. Next amendment is number 7, Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 7 to Senate File 66 and ask for your favorable consideration. Hundreds of Wyomingites are losing out on their chance to reap the benefits of home ownership because of a supply shortage. This shortage is most acute among attainable homes where moderate income renters Younger first-time home buyers, like our nurses and teachers, are losing faith that they will be able to experience this part of the American dream. We must do better. Building more homes for moderate income families and first-time home buyers is essential. In Cody, we are suffering from a housing shortage, as many of you in your communities are. I have yet to hear anyone say, when housing is mentioned, oh, we're fine. We have plenty of housing. It's not just tourist communities that are affected. I visited with the city official from Upton the other day, and he said they are having a housing shortage in their community as well. In Cody, there are 105 short-term rental houses registered with the city. There are probably many more that go unregistered. These homes are not available for sale or long-term rental and are essentially out of the market. There are probably more than that in the city, but our county has no regulation at all. And so there are short-term rentals in our county that once again take these housing units out of the long-term rental or sale market. Financial incentives can encourage builders to build new homes that are within reach for many first-time home buyers. This amendment addresses that issue. This amendment appropriates $21 million from the ARPA Direct funds to help address the housing shortage. Let's walk through the amendment. Starting on page 1, line 7 through 12, this would be a grant program administered by the Wyoming Community Development Authority, the WCDA. Line 14 states that there is a $3 million cap on maximum on the grant. Lines 17 through 24 require that there be a 1-to-1 matching funds. Lines 26 through 34 restrict the type of organizations that can apply to political subdivisions, public-private partnerships, or public trusts. Line 36 defines the deed restrictions. I think this is a key point. These homes have to be owner-occupied, and they can only be sold for a determined appreciation rate. Owner occupancy of the homes keeps them from turning into rentals, especially short-term rentals. The remainder of the bill defines the income eligibility for the projects. There are 2 options to qualify based on household income. Page 2, lines 10 through 4 is based on the federal poverty level, and lines 16 through 20 is based on area median income for those counties that may fall with outside of the federal poverty level income requirements. This explains the amendment, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Members, first time on the amendment, first time on the amendment. Representative Schwartz on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am on and for the amendment. So a little background, this was part of the governor's initial request for ARPA Direct funding, and it was denied by the Joint Appropriations Committee. My impression was we did not have lengthy conversations. It did not rise to the top of our priority list. I think, as you all know, my particular county has a severe housing crisis. If you look at our school district, at our hospital, at our local governments, we're increasingly facing a situation of high turnover and difficulty in hiring new people. But I would add that during testimony to the JAC, it's clear this is not just something happening in one county. And many of our state agencies, I would highlight the department that is responsible for incarceration, is increasingly having problems with housing. A number of other agencies are having problems. When I talk to local government people around the state, this is a problem that is growing, and I think we need to start figuring out how we are going to address this statewide to provide not just housing, but good housing. Not a lot of the housing in our state, sadly, is becoming dated and not truly adequate for the climate and the needs of our people. So on and for the amendment.
Thank you. Representative Duncan, first time, then Representative Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment, it's not just a regional issue in one county. This is a national problem. This is a problem in the city that we're in. This is a problem throughout our state. It is not just affordable, it's actually an attainable. It is a workforce problem. We have a lot of affordable housing in the rest of the state, but we don't have the middle housing income. Middle housing is what we're missing. We're missing that right in the middle. We have high income and we have low income, but we don't have this right in the middle. So we really need to help those in some of our other communities, and we need to have projects with the access to these funds. So whether it is a subdivision, whether it is a rehabilitation of existing infrastructure, buildings, projects, things like that, that rehab those into attainable housing for multiple units within one space. Like I have a place in my community that used to be an old hotel that is above a store. It needs to go in and have complete rehab that could have multiple units within that facility, which could then turn into a work, live, play situation that could have transitional housing for workforce. It could be students. It could be people like the healthcare that comes through in different timeframes. So we could do and utilize this across the entire state. So on and for.
Thank you. Representative Washut first time, then Representative Larson. Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is an amendment that's both too much and too little. $21 million spread across the state really isn't going to go all that far in terms of answering the needs and addressing this problem. At the same time, it's nearly half of the ARPA funds that we're talking about today. And so it's a policy call for this body. Do you really want to commit $21 million of this available finite amount of money that we have to this one issue, knowing that 21 million isn't really going to fix the problem statewide?
Thank you. Any of the members, we have Representative Larson Lloyd and then to Representative Craigo.
I think that we all.
Representative Larson, go ahead and address the chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And thank you again for the reminder. I don't know. Stupid is stupid does. I do it plenty. So, Mr. Chairman and members, I think that we all recognize in all our communities that housing is a significant issue. I disagree with my colleague that co-sponsored this, that we didn't have much discussion on this as we debated it in appropriations, because it impacts all of us around the state. But if we look at the appropriation, and it goes to the governor's office, and then you read down through there, it can provide up to $3 million, right, for purchase of property and infrastructure and those sorts of things, which okay, good, and we look at all of these things you can do. But if you took this money, this 21 million, and divided across all of the counties, there's less than $1 million to each county. There's just not enough bread, then there's just not enough butter to put across the bread and benefit you. And so that's the problem we had with it from the beginning. In the governor's letter, he was at 22 million, I'm 22.6 million, and the idea is right, but and you can say, well, a little bit, Representative Larson would just help, but we don't know. I struggle with that and think that maybe we need to look at other options, and I don't know what those options are, but I just don't think that this really gets us, although the intent and the rules and stuff in here are good, there's just not much there to do it with. And so I would urge you to resist this amendment.
Thank you. Representative Craigo, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just have a couple questions for the good representative that has brought the amendment. So as we look down at the bottom of page 1, there's a couple phrases in there: public-private partnership, public trust. Where are those defined? What exactly does that mean? And then the other question I have is, right above that, it says any land acquired with grant funds shall be held by, and then it has the list. Is that in perpetuity? Is that until the home is sold? how exactly does that work? If somebody goes and buys a home, do they get to own the land under it, or does the public entity or one of these other groups have to own the land forever? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Western, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think the road to ruin is paved with good intentions. And I think the intention behind this is excellent. I think this is a serious issue in my county and pretty much all of our counties, but the devil really is in the details. And when I see things like some of these deed restrictions, all this kind of stuff, it really, I think, has to be elaborated down to a minutia. I mean, if we're just building, say, a fourplex or an eightplex, does this mean that they can't sell it? If so, for what rates? And I don't think it really addresses the thing that really helps folks enter the middle class, which is home ownership. Does this enable that? Does it prohibit that? So if those questions could be answered, that would be excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, I have the same concerns as a good country lawyer brought up. And just kind of getting into more detail, I have a concern about residency length requirements. I mean, I'd hate to see people that are just new to the community coming in and occupying these units. I have an appreciation too for some of the ministries that currently exist in our state that help fill the gap and build using community resources and community labor for low-income families in various communities throughout the state. And then I'm also curious where the match would come from. It mentions a one-to-one.
Thank you. Other members, Representative Jennings, any other members first time? Let's please approach a mic. Representative Jennings, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, I just can't help but think that somewhere along the line, someone somewhere in our state is going to stand up and say, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Please vote no.
Any other members first time? Representative Romero Martinez, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I like line number 10. I mean, I like all the lines, so I'm in support of this amendment. But I like it. It's thoughtful. I think it was probably thoughtful when the chief executive proposed it and got lost in the conversation. There's a good organization there that can help oversee the distribution of this program, and I think we need to continue to talk about it. I think just in this last short 2 years, almost 2 years, that I've been here, we continue to talk about the government like it's separate from us. We need to realize that we are the government and it's us that make those decisions. And secondly, I know that it's incremental, so it's one toothpick at a time to try to build a big house. But we seen yesterday that we're willing to take big steps to try to get perspective. This is just one small step in the right direction, and housing is a basic need, so I stand in support of the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any of the members first time? First time. First time, second time. First time? First time. Representative Burt, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to clarify, last October, I did mention the fact that I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Thanks.
Any other members first time? First time. Second time. Second time, Representative Duncan. Second time, Representative Duncan, then Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So may I remind the body that not every project and not every applicant for this would be $1 million. There's a lot of properties around our state that would only be $50,000. Some of these projects would be less than maybe only $100,000. So this money would not be all expended by every county, would necessarily be expended by $1 million. There's a lot of things around this state that don't cost to the extent that Teton County costs, or that some of the other places are. When you have a public-private partnership, a one-to-one match, think about it, $500,000, that's $1 million. It can go a long ways when you have community partnerships that multiple community partners partner up. One company, one group in particular that I can't name, but they have people who actually have to help build, who have to put sweat equity into it. That goes a long way. We need to have something like this so that we can get out of the way of ourselves and get creative, so that we can have some creative solutions that's not just throwing money at the problem, but let's look at different kinds of ways we can solve this. Can we have government step in and help get out of the way, change some of the zoning, change some of the ordinances, change some of the infrastructure to be able to have some of these creative solutions? It's not always about money, but maybe the money is the incentive to be able to get all of these parties at the table to work out a solution. Also remember that the entity that's in this amendment actually is the only entity that we have. We don't have a housing authority for our state, but this entity can sit there and do the rules and the regulations to be able to have some of those residency requirements. They can do deed regulations, some deed restrictions, that income or residency, that you have to own it for, say, 10 years before you can sell it. And if it does get sold, it has to be sold to another person within a certain socioeconomic, area. But quit us thinking in this certain mindset. It's about the same thing. The meaning of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So what the idea is not just throwing money at a solution or a problem, but maybe trying to get out of our own way and out of the way of government doing the same thing, and maybe having community and stakeholder involvement to maybe make a real significant difference. On and for the amendment.
Thank you. Representative Schwartz, this is second times. Any members for their second time, please come to a mic. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So a number of questions have been raised about technical aspects of how these kind of programs work. I could go on for a long time. I've spent 20 years in my county working on these issues. So anybody who wants to talk about it later, I'd be happy to. But my good friend from District 54 used an analogy about this just isn't enough butter. And I would have to disagree with him. I really don't like dry toast, but any amount of butter really improves the dry toast. And in this case, I think we have to recognize that this is going to be a growing problem in our state, and we have to start putting butter on it soon. Too little butter? Maybe, but at least it's butter. Please vote for.
Can anybody follow that up on your second time?
Yeah.
Anybody for a second time? No more butter. All right, bring it home. Representative
Okay.
Newsom.
So I am sad to be the speaker that has to speak after that, but I do need to address a few things that were asked. 21 million, too much, too little. How about 210? Let's do 210 million. Is that enough? What's the amount? Well, this is where we start. This is a starting point. Not every county will have the ability to use these funds. Not every county has the infrastructure to use these funds. Public-private partnership is just what it says. It's a group of private businesses along with a city, a town, or a county that would form a partnership. Many of your economic development groups are part of this public-private partnership. The public trust issue is addressed in Statute 135510, and that says that these public trusts may invest in real estate as part of that statute. Another one were the deed restrictions. Why would we ever have deed restrictions? We had a really nice development put below the hospital in my town. It was probably 25 or 30 years ago. It was built by one of our manufacturers, by a person who has a manufacturing company. It was built for his employees. It was built because at that point, 20, 30 years ago, there was not affordable housing in our community for that middle income worker. We're not talking about people that are not working. We're talking about people, your teachers, your nurses, people that are working really hard and simply because of inflation and because of this housing shortage cannot afford a home. By the time those homes sold twice, they were back at market value. So the goal in the deed restrictions is to keep these homes in that affordable space, to keep these homes in that place where the nurses and the nurses and the teachers, and those people making that nice middle income salary can still afford to buy a home in my community. As far as the match, the easiest answer is with infrastructure. If there's an infrastructure project, your city can apply for these funds to get a match to create that infrastructure, to bring that infrastructure to the property. So I hope you'll vote for this. I think the people that said this is not enough money are right. It is not, but it's a start. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we are voting on second reading, amendment number 7, House Bill, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Chair is in doubt. All those in favor, please rise. All those opposed, more than 18. My apologies. I don't know if it was the acoustics or the butter that was in my ears, but I didn't call that one very well. The amendment is not adopted. I think we're halfway through the amendments, folks. Next amendment, number 8, Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 8 to Senate File 66, and I ask for your favorable consideration. Friends, this amendment has no butter attached to it at all. What it does is it goes into the portion of the bill that outlines how the appropriation for workforce issues should be appropriated. And you'll notice on page 5 and 6 that there are 7 Romanettes that describe how that appropriation should be used. What this amendment does is it adds to that list for targeted programs to reduce the gender wage gap. And friends, for those of you who have been around for a while, know that this is an issue that we have been talking about for years. We have recognized that we being the state of Wyoming, have the largest gender wage gap in the nation. I just checked this morning to see what the latest data is, and regrettably, in 2021, we are now the worst state in the nation. Right, we are 51st, where the gap between the wages of men who work full-time year-round compared to the wages of women who work full-time year-round, we are 51st. That's not something that is attractive to companies who are thinking of coming to Wyoming. And in fact, over the past couple of years, we have even seen headlines in major financial and business magazines that have said, Wyoming worst for women, right? That particular article was about retirement savings. But let's face it, we like to, and we want to be able to say that we are business friendly and we want businesses to come here. We also want kind of our citizens, both men and women, to be able to be financially self-sufficient. Okay. So what have we done in the past? Because we've known about this now for over a decade. First, we've done our own studies, and we have verified that data that has come out from national organizations, and we understand it. We understand it better. We have also looked at some pieces of legislation, honestly, that have limited employers, right? We have said in those pieces of legislation that have not made it across the finish line that employers, for example, should not ask prospective employees what they earned at their last job. Because if you earned lower wages at a last job, that a new job that pays you 10 or 15% more could be really attractive. But that just perpetuates kind of lower wages in a former job. With bills like that, the sentiment of the body has been, we don't want to tell employers what to do, right? We want Wyoming solutions. So what this amendment does is honestly a Wyoming solution. It incentivizes employers, right? We just add to the list of workplace issues, then we want that $10 million that is already in the bill, programs that can address the gender wage gap. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I ask for your favorable consideration and any questions from the body.
Thank you, Madam Minority Floor Leader. Representative Washut, first time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, you remember we passed out of here a small $25,000 appropriation to host a planning conference on first responder suicides. And I think this proposal is a nice complement to that, that after that planning exercise takes place, there will certainly be requests for supplemental funding to actually implement whatever plan comes out of that conference. So it would certainly be my hope that these grants would be available after that planning conference to actually help in the implementation.
Any other members, first time on this amendment, on this amendment, on this amendment, on this amendment? Madam Minority Floor Leader, any follow-up?
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. So members, we are voting on second reading, amendment number 8, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The amendment is not adopted. Next amendment, number 9. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I move second reading amendment number 9 to Senate File 66. Members, as you look at the amendment, I think it's helpful to look at page 4 of your bill. And if you look at page 4, you can really see this bill. It's laid out like a budget bill. And then you can see where each agency gets these funds appropriated in this bill. Then if you want more information, you can read the paragraph. And I think it's enlightening to read all that. And I think, so what I'm trying to do with this amendment, members, is really on page 4 of your bill, on line 20, on page 4, you can see an appropriation to Agency 48, the Department of Health, for $15 million. That was not in the original bill. That was an amendment brought on our friends down the hall. And really, as I read that, I thought, what's this money for? And as I read it, it's really, I think, for kind of operating expenses. And I guess in my mind, I thought it was more, I was hoping it was more for kind of development of facilities, upgrading facilities that we saw there were kind of shortcomings in across the state during this recent health crisis. So what this amendment does is takes that $15 million and eliminates that appropriation to the Department of Health, and then moves that $15 million into the SLIB board, the 5 elected officials. And that would move it down to line 24 of your bill. And you can see that amount is $55 million. That's what came out of the Appropriations Committee. And so there's $15 million on line 20. I would like to combine that with an additional $15 million. That's why the number says 30 on the amendment, and then move that and have elected officials be able to dole that out in a 1-to-1 match, not the department on whoever comes and shows and wants operating expenses. That's what CARES money is for, in my opinion, and I think we still have CARES money available. So I just think it's a better use of that. And then the other part of the amendment, members and Mr. Speaker, is really on page 8 and 9, where it says delete entirely. And it's page 8 and 9, or excuse me, line 8 and 9 of the amendment, and line 6, frankly. The current cap on the 1-to-1 matches is $7.5 million. So your local health facility in your community could apply and must have at least a 1-to-1 match up to $7.5 million. And this just simply raises that to 10. So if you've got a bigger project or you've got a couple projects in your community, that would just raise it from 7.5 to 10. That's not an appropriation of any more money. That just changes the parameters of the 1-to-1 grant, the ceiling on it from 7.5 to 10. So in short, what this amendment does is really adds $15 million of ARPA Direct to the SLIB board capital construction grants. and it moves the 15 million from the rural health operations to this grant program as well. So I'd stand for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Members, first time, Representative Rodriguez-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a question for the bringer of the amendment. On the top of the amendment, it mentions HHS capital construction. I'm just curious if entities that receive Title X funding through the feds would be eligible for this. And if so, I have major concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members, first time? First time on the amendment. First time, Representative Larson Lloyd.
Folks, I just.
Representative
No,
Larson.
So, Mr. Chairman and folks, I'll get there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. Chairman and Mr. Speaker and folks, just a little bit of history on this. In the governor's request, this program came out at a request of $40 million to kind of do the same thing that it was going to be under the Department of Health. The Department of Health was going to look across all healthcare providers and allocate $40 million to help them with infrastructure, capital construction, things of that nature. As this comes before the Appropriations Committee, that amount was increased to $55 million, and it was removed from the Department of Health and put under SLIB to look at grants. And if you look at the footnote 15, 16, I believe, starting on the bottom of page 9, and kind of goes over, kind of tells you how this is all going to be allocated. When we done that, we originally started out with a maximum grant for any single project of $5 million, thinking that, and we outlined in here what skin they have to have in the game, thought that it should be at $5 million. As we move forward, and you've heard this conversation repeatedly, that inflation, materials, things of that nature, that the $5 million may have been a little shy even based on what we have there. And it was raised up in an amendment in appropriations to 7.5. This amendment would raise it up that any single project could get 10 million. I would also please ask that you take note at the bottom of page 10 that of all of this money in an amendment that came from the other side, there's $7 million of this that's been dedicated to providing grants to community mental health centers for crisis stabilization facility and women's substance abuse disorder facilities. So there's a lot in that appropriation, a lot in this amendment. Just want you to have the history as you get ready to make a decision on what you want to do.
Thank you. Members, first time, Representative Sith, first time on the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I would like to divide the amendment with lines 1 and 11 being Division 1 and the remainder being Division 2.
Affirm what the division is. 1 through 11 is division.
No, just line 1 and then just line 11.
Division 1 is line 1 and line 11. And Division 2 is the remainder. All right, it appears to be divisible. I want to affirm what the divisions are. Lines 1 and line 11 individually are Division 1. The remainder of the amendment is Division 2. So how would you like to proceed, Representative Stiff?
Mr. Chairman, On Division 1 first, I would encourage an aye vote on Division 1. It fixes a problem with the current draft. The current draft allows these one-time ARPA direct funds to be used for operational costs. And that's just a bad policy idea to pour one-time money into paying for your ongoing costs of operation. So Division 1 deletes that so that the $15 million for rural healthcare clinics will be for capital construction like the other $55 million is for. So vote aye on Division 1.
Any members on Division 1? Division 1, any members on Division 1? Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Regarding that, I guess looking at the language on page 15, it doesn't actually say operating costs. So I'm wondering whether that's, if you look at lines 5 and 6, up to $13 million may be expended to provide grants related to costs incurred by rural health clinics. So maybe you're thinking operational, but perhaps it was to, renovate a room for HVAC or something. So please flesh out for me why it's being interpreted as operating costs.
Members, first time. We're on first time on Division 1. First time, Representative Summers, Division 1.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Kind of a similar question, and I'm not really sure what is all in this ARPA budget, but one issue at our rural clinic has been the ability to maintain staff. And so I know there was some discussion about providing some ARPA dollars to be able to try to, every place, not just rural, but all hospitals have had to hire temps, which have come at a high cost. And so I thought there was an effort at one time to provide some ARPA money to that solution. It would seem to me at least this would cover, this money in these rural clinics perhaps would cover some operational and some of the costs associated with having to bring in temps in this time. So trying to understand kind of what is being paid for and what is not. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Larson Lloyd on the Division 1 of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the conclusion drawn from the good attorney from the southwest part of the state comes in is that there's no language in there prohibiting the use of these funds for operational costs. And so one could easily come to that conclusion that then if a grant is provided, that the clinic could use that for whatever purpose they feel is appropriate. And so although it doesn't, I think the fact that it's silent on that is where that comes from.
Any other members? First time Division 1. First time Division 1. Second time Division 1. Second time Division 1 to the divider. Representative Stith.
Mr. Speaker, so it's a policy choice whether you want $15 million of these ARPA direct funds to be spent for your cost of operation. I think the plain language of the current draft says costs, and costs is a very generalized term that would cover operations to answer the prior question. I just think from my point of view, it's a better policy choice to make one-time dollars used for one-time expenses. So vote aye on Division 1.
Members, we're voting on Division 1 of second reading amendment number 9, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Chair is in doubt. All those in favor of Division 1, please rise. All those opposed. (3026). The amendment, the division of the amendment is adopted. I was just checking, if we got to 3030, Representative Blackburn would have showed up, and I just want to make sure he was welcome. So because we are only minus one person today, and I wanted to be clear if we were getting our votes correctly. So we're Division 1 adopted, we're in Division 2, Representative Stith.
Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding that what Division 2 does is add another $15 million to this so that you're upping it from 15 to 30. So since we've approved Division 1, now we have 15 million for rural healthcare clinics for essentially one-time capital construction costs. We've also got 55 million for other hospitals. So that's $70 million. The question is, do you want to spend 85 million on that? And, you know, to my mind, no, but you vote your conscience on that.
Chairman Harshman, first time on the Division 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So just to be clear, there's 55 million now in the account that came in this bill, and Division 2 then would add 30. Because with adopting the Division 1, we eliminated that 15. So if you counted those two pots together, we 5 minutes ago had 70 million, now it's down to 55. And so this part of the amendment then would bring that to 85. And this it keeps it in the SLIB board. 5 elected officials have to approve one-to-one grants around the state, and the limit on any one grant, so one community can't come in and take 50 of the 85 million. It's limited to 10 million. So that'll spread that out to over 8 projects, even if they all, you know, hit the 10 million max, which is, I think currently with the 7.5 million match at 55 million, it's like 7.3 some projects. So we'll get another project, maybe more. And I think it's a good use of one-time dollars, requires a one-to-one match. There was a question from the representative from Park County about, I think that refers to reproductive health service, family planning. I don't know the answer to that, but these would be under the control of the SLIB board. The 5 elected officials would take in all that information before any grant and, you know, and decide on the merits of any of these grants. So again, this is for our local health facilities in all of our communities. Some responded very well. Some are going to need a little help. And this would be a one-to-one match around the state. So appreciate your aye vote on this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Brown, first time on Division 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a really good amendment, ladies and gentlemen, and I think if there's any proof of what we lacked during the pandemic was rural health care. And I think we had a lot of proof of that. And then the other thing I'll say here is this body's like 1 for 6 against appropriations right now. So vote aye and let's go 2 for 6.
Any other member, first time Division 1, first time Division 1. Representative Summers on Division 2, I'm serious, Division 2. Division 2, Representative Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Honor and support. I think there's a tremendous need out there in Wyoming. I'll admit my community's building a hospital, could use a little help. So honor and support.
Any other members, first time, or first time Division 2. Sorry, I'm getting a little, first time Division 2, second time Division 2, second time Division 2, second time, seeing no one approaching the mic. So members, we are voting on Division 2. House, second reading amendment number 9, Senate File 66. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. The division is adopted. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, division being called. All those in favor of the Division 2, please rise. All those opposed? The amendment is adopted, 28-26. Mr. Majority, the division of the amendment and the entirety of the amendment is adopted. Second reading number 9. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Committee announcements. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee number 7, corporations will meet at 12:10 in EO5 to hear the following 3 bills. Senate File 12, airport restaurant liquor licenses. Some deja vu there. Senate File 53, local government liability pool amendments, and Senate File 55, insurance sandbox.
Thank you. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 8 will meet tomorrow, Thursday, the 3rd, on noon adjournment to consider Senate File 41, expanding Next Generation 911, and Senate File 92, driver's license renewal or extension.
Thank you. Chairman Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, education, will meet today in 10 minutes to consider 3 bills, the continuation of Senate File 32, K-3 reading assessment, Senate File 78, language proficiency seal of biliteracy, and Senate File 43, community college district elections.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House appropriations will meet on noon recess to continue our work on Senate File 48, 79, 90, 102, and 112, and re-referrals 26 and 38. What we don't complete, we'll probably work on in the evening. And I also, there's a chance that between 3 and 3:30, your JCC conference committee, if we get done with the appropriations bills, we'll continue our conference committee from this morning.
Further announcements? We are in recess until 2 p.m.